Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rollwise Show, the place where we talk about and play games. Today, Jeff and I are going to be discussing our recent playthrough of the game Forbidden Lands. Those of you that had a chance to catch a couple of the episodes know that we tried to get as much into the Forbidden Lands as we possibly could, but we ended on an interesting note where the entire party TPK'd in an episode that was so short it wouldn't even have really made a YouTube short out of the deal, unfortunately. But we're going to talk about all that from our experience with the setting, the hex crawling, the combat, and give you our thoughts about it, going for what we learned, I should say. So, Jeff, are you ready to jump into this conversation about
Yeah,
our
no,
Forbidden Lands experience?
I think we're going to be able to present both sides. I definitely think we're coming down on either side of the fence on this one.
Well, actually, I think we're going to be coming down on multiple sides. We get the GM, we get the player perspective, we get the like it, we get the don't like it stuff. I mean, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to Forbidden Lands. So
There
for
is.
those of you, that are not familiar with what Forbidden Lands is and may have no idea what we're talking about, but you clicked on the video anyways, thank you for stopping by. If you like what we talk about today, just why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Maybe jump in the comments, say what you like, maybe tell us what games you'd like to see us play, all that kind of stuff. So let's set the scene. Forbidden Lands, what is it? Forbidden Lands is a game by Free League Publishing. Those of you that know Free League know that they use kind of their proprietary engine, the Year Zero engine, and they kind of make it bespoke for each of their games. So if you've heard of games like Mutant Year Zero, Coriolis, Alien, Vaesen, you've at least heard of their games and know that they run in a similar fashion with their D6 each time. Now, the game was released in 2018, so we by no means are early to this party. We missed whatever cool point that was to be like on the leading edge of these reviews. We missed that boat by far. So there are definitely well-established communities, people that have absolutely loved the game, have had huge monolithic campaigns in the world, and you can find them on Reddit and in the Free League forums, just talking about the kind of things that they do to make this a wonderful play experience for them and their players. So, what's the pitch? I'm going to go ahead and let you tell me what you think the pitch is, and or do you want me just to go ahead and give a pitch?
Well, the problem is it's a hex crawl, and so there's really not much pitch. Other than there was this mist covering this area for hundreds of years. Now suddenly the mist is gone, and somehow a ton of unqualified, unskilled people are going to this place to die looking for treasure that they probably don't need.
But everybody's got to eat, right? And for whatever reason, bringing treasure back into the economy makes it happen. And so you're hitting a lot of those points there. It's a dark fantasy sandbox where you guys play less as heroes, but more as either the outcasts, the wanderers, the people that are treasure hunting. The meat sacks that are trying to find fame, fortune, and establish themselves in the Forbidden Lands. You're trying to survive and thrive, I guess we would say. This isn't a game where you necessarily start with a quest giver. Like you're not. I mean, you could obviously set up that type of play in this, but as Chef said, it's a hex crawl. Your goal is to kind of find the world and explore it and see what happens. It is a dangerous world, as we found, sort of. So the adventure comes from the conflict that you have, both exploring the world, at the people in it, and the monsters that are there. And so you also brought up the Blood Mist. Now, the Blood Mist is kind of like the central focus of why the Forbidden Lands is the Forbidden Lands, and it is it kind of kept everyone in isolation for generations. And I think we'll talk about this maybe a little bit when we get into the setting, or maybe this is the time we talk about it, because I was thinking
we
we
can talk about it now.
So basically, what is the Blood Mist? So the Blood Mist is this thing that was unleashed as part of a conflict that happens in the Forbidden
Did you
Lands.
say spoilers for the 9-year-old game?
Oh, spoiler alerts. I don't actually think I'm going to give any spoilers out. I mean, this is all stuff that
Oh,
was
okay. This
given
is the
to the
blood
thing.
mist is commonly known. Okay.
If you want me to go into spoilers, I will spoil the shit out of this. But I think for those people that maybe want to play it and understand it organically, maybe I'll put that spoiler tag a little farther down. But in general, the impression that you're supposed to get from the blood mist is that the blood mist rolled out along the forbidden lands, because it became the forbidden lands because of this. And so there was the blood mist at night would basically just rip people apart and prevented people from traveling. So if it was past the horizon, supposedly it was too far away, because you were safe in your home, you were safe in your village. And so people kind of developed these kind of superstitions that that kept them safe and isolated. Now, because nobody was exploring, nobody was kind of communicating with each other, it was quite the surprise to everybody when suddenly the blood mist itself lifted. It was a very recent event according to the timeline, and it was inexplicable, meaning that really the general populace didn't know why that was. And so the Forbidden Lands, having almost 300 years of this blood mist kind of covering it, suddenly is open again, and it's full of ruins, treasures, all kinds of danger, and things that survived in the mist. And I think, me personally, I really like the idea of that premise, this kind of almost like El Dorado, like, oh, let's go find the treasure kind of
Yeah, but
thing.
okay, so, and this might be me
Mhm.
misinterpreting the lore, but I didn't really find a lot of reasons to believe there was any more treasure in the Forbidden Lands than anywhere else, if I'm being honest.
Sure.
Um, and so it didn't feel like the California gold rush to me, like we needed to get somewhere. It felt like we were already there and
Hmm.
trying to live our lives. And then for some reason, we decided to give up those lives and start just wandering meaninglessly around the forest. And I, I don't know. I didn't see it. When I hear you describe it and I hear your excitement, it makes me want to play that game. The
Hmm.
game that I played didn't feel like that game to me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, and I think the hex crawl adds a level of minutia to it, because there's a lot of games where traveling between the place where you're at and the place where all the cool shit is, that travel section, they're like, unless something cool is going to happen during that travel,
It gets hand
really
waved.
it just can be hand waved. And a lot of games have decided that exploration of that kind of minute level isn't necessary, but it's kind of the central purpose of this game, is to, you never know what
Yes.
the exploration part of it's going to be. So it's a very different thing, because you have to play through that in order to experience the game as intended. Like if you just hand waved the hex crawling away, like you're like, whoa, now I'm just playing the ears. I'm just you know what I'm saying?
No, no, no,
You're
no, no. I understand that.
Mhm.
I we'll get into it. Go ahead and continue.
Oh no, that was kind of what I had. And so I'd like to actually hear more about what you expected the game wanted to be, because you kind of expect, if I mean, that's how I pitched it. I think if I go back to that session 0 episode, I was kind of like, danger, you're rogues, you're going out to find treasure and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
like we
think
had.
I think part of the problem is Brent and I didn't really build rogues meant for adventuring. Brent
True.
built a solitary hunter. I built a druid that he had saved at one time that wanted to get more lore and learn more about stuff. And I think there was a little bit of a failure in character creation. Um, and then the rules that first session really sort of fought us playing the characters we thought we'd designed.
Hmm.
Like Brent being a hunter, and unless he has the chef skill specifically, he can go out
Hmm.
and kill meat and he can eat it immediately, but then everything else that he killed just turns to spoil 5 seconds after you get done eating. And I think that threw him, not to put
Hmm.
words in Brent's mouth. As a druid, I thought, I was like, oh, we can go to new and interesting places. And part of my exploration could be looking for new herbs to use in medications and different types of applications. And like, nope, it's not really handled in the base game rules.
We did
Really sort
we did
of like
discover
you can
a little
hunt
bit of
for
that.
food.
Hmm.
And, there was a certain amount of retconning in that first session that we kind of had to do with our characters, which is fine. It's not the end of the world. It
Hmm.
just, I think there was I think for two of us, me specifically, Brent, I believe so, um, we had an expectation of one thing and got delivered something different. And I think it started the whole thing off on the wrong foot for us.
Hmm. And that's probably my fault, because I think that, when we were looking at the rules, I think there was a not a deep enough understanding of what you guys were hoping to like live like in the Forbidden Lands. Because I think the one thing it's interesting is that because it's a hex crawler, everyone kind of expected this to be like life simulator to some degree. You were expecting to play a realistic type
Yeah.
character, a character that lived in the Forbidden Lands and was now kind of branching out to find their fame and fortune, maybe, or in your case, the lore of the land, and rediscover some of that ancient history that may have been sequestered away by the blood mist or something like that. And I think that the how you're like, what is in a day of your characters, it felt like your guys were like, oh, well, what is in a day of my characters? And you're like, oh, I thought these mechanically supported my what do I do today, but they really didn't. And like
No,
the way that I
it's
felt like
the,
I lived, like, because I mean, we got kind of stuck on the whole hunting thing, but I think it makes sense to me. Like you guys go out, kill a rabbit, you take the meat, you eat the meat that night for dinner, and you get your food for the day. Doesn't mean your resource die changes, but it meant that you really were in this like, day by day
well,
thing, that if you didn't
right.
catch a
Well,
rabbit, then all of a
and the
sudden you
other
were like,
thing, the other thing is the day being divided into four parts, 4 6-hour
mhm,
sections. So everything we did took 6 hours. If we walked, it was 6 hours of walking. If we
mhm,
foraged, it was 6 hours of foraging. If we set up a camp and ate, it was 6 hours of that. And I'm not even going to dispute that those time frames are wrong,
mhm.
but it really feels like you don't do anything in a day. Like we should have just stayed in the farm and farmed for 6 hours a day, turned our product into something else for 6 hours a day, ate for
Mhm.
6 hours a day, and slept for 6 hours a day because that's all it felt like we were doing. And then
That's
we
fair.
couldn't even set a watch. And like if the game wants you with two people, if the game wants you to be sleepy and make it even deadlier, that's okay. That's a design principle that
Mhm.
is all right. But I really felt like with two of us, everything was kind of set again. Like it was amazing that we survived as long as we did. Because the first time something turned hostile, we died
It,
in the
it's true.
second
It's
round of
true.
combat.
So I think there's two things that we can do. We could either kind of wrap up and talk about the setting a little bit, or we can kind of get into the mechanics. Where do you want to go? Because I think like the setting itself is an area that I think is an interesting topic for it, because like the feel of the lands and everything like that. Because there was
Yeah,
a
if you
lot
want
that
to
we
talk about the
experienced
setting,
even.
you have a lot of excitement for it. So
So, well, so here's what's interesting, and I was thinking about this really hard, because first of all, you're asking yourself, well, what is what kind of world is this? What makes it feel different than other fantasy settings? And I think they did a good job making some distinguishing components to it. I think the tough part is that I'm not sure you guys got to experience that in its majesty with the short sessions that we did. I mean, you obviously got to feel like you got to hear about the fact that the land was coming out of isolation. You got to encounter and you know discover a religion, the dominant religion of the Rush brothers, and kind of their place in the world and how they interacted with the communities and everything like that. Um, you got to you guys didn't necessarily get to see how the interactions between the different kin went as much as maybe I'd hoped, because we never went to like a town like the Hollows or anything like that. um and so
well,
it's
yeah,
it's kind
I
of a.
mean, we were kind of out exploring, and so going to a town felt
Mhm.
regressionary to me in my
Yeah,
brain.
like
Like,
you started out
why
and
would we
about.
go to the town? There's not. That's not exploring. That's going someplace we've been.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so it was never like an option unless one of us was so hurt the other one had to drag them there.
well, and it feels kind of weird because I following the prescribed starting that you do. I mean, I think you're right. I think the idea that, going to the town first is like, it would be a weird move for people because you're like, okay, we start in this square, which is a recommended square to start from the quick start. And then
Yeah,
you're
what
like,
was it?
well,
Good old
I had
P21 or whatever it was?
wherever it
J21.
was, something like that. But it was like, oh, we head to the town. And it's like, you kind of, that would have allowed you to experience more of the world. But obviously, then the other thing is we give you the legend of Weatherstone. And the legend kind of like is supposed to be your carrot in this scenario that takes you to an adventure site, right? And I feel like is it different than other fantasy settings? I would say history wise, there's definitely some flourishes in it that give it some unique properties, but I'm not going to say that it's so unique that it,
You
apparently
know,
I
I
felt
can
because
see
the first
some
thing that came to
charm. I'm not always the biggest lore guy in a new game. Like if we
Mhm.
play a game long enough, then I can get into the lore, but I just need the high points usually. But I don't, let me put it this way. The way that I feel
Mhm.
about the game today has very little to do with the backstory and the lore.
Yeah. Well, and that's true.
Because I thought they were fine.
Yeah.
They were vague,
Mhm. Well, and
but
we
that
didn't
was
really get to
designed to get
dive
you
into it.
out and looking around because it's a
Exactly.
hex crawl, which you're supposed to explore and see what you find.
Yeah.
And
Did you out of curiosity though, did you at least like the iron idol in the rowan tree as kind of a world building moment? Did that pique your
I like the
curiosity?
Iron Idol in the Rowan Tree. It made me want to investigate. But then the second you said that, it looks like maybe the ruins aren't as empty as we thought, then Brent was like, I don't think we can survive this. So he was going to leave, and that was going to leave me there by myself. And so I'm like,
Mhm.
then I guess we should go. I kind of wanted to take it out of the tree because as a druid, I felt like people pounding iron things into other living, like to me, the tree was a living creature.
Mhm.
And that is somebody doing something to it that I can't abide, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, okay, and that's good. Actually, because these details, like the iron idol and the rowan tree and all that stuff, these are like a lot of these details are coming up on the spot, as we're
Mhm.
preparing for these different things. And I like the organic nature of it because, you guys encountered the orcs, for example. It made the world, and
I liked
I
the orc
mean,
encounter. That was, honest to God, different. It was a little
mhm,
different than anything I'd ever experienced in an orc encounter.
yeah.
And
So
I thought it went fairly well.
and it was nice to kind of introduce you to this living environment that we were creating kind of at the same time
Mhm.
because other people that use those same adventure sites aren't going to have those
Right.
same roles or
They're
anything
gonna come
like
up with
that.
something different.
And I think that in those first few settings, it actually the world didn't feel so dark, but it also like the tone that it tries to imply to you is that this is a rediscoverable area. It also didn't feel so empty. um it felt like there was a very large amount of
Every couple of
competition.
hexes, we found more living, breathing, you know,
Well, I mean, and it's like I don't
peoples.
know.
And it was like this for for a scary abandoned forest. It doesn't feel very abandoned or scary.
Well, and it's like, and then you come to find out that really it's not a scary abandoned forest, it's just a scary forest. It's full of
True.
stuff. And
Yeah.
and this is where I think the setting stuff kind of gave me a little bit of inconsistency. And I mean, and how much this affects you and your table, I think is just really is more of an expectation setting thing. Because if you
I think it
just
is.
use the pitch that they give you, you're going to get the impression that you guys are setting off into the wilds and running into other people. It's going to be a very fierce fight for scant resources and treasure, when in fact every encounter you have could literally be another person, group, thing wandering through this.
Yeah.
And then as you build the world and as you kind of like come to realize, you realize that the Forbidden Lands, even during the Blood Mist, had all kinds of exceptions to the everybody stayed indoors thing. And so like I mean it is absolutely wild. And I mean, I'm going to put a spoiler tag here and I'll try to create a chapter so there's a little bit of distinguishment. But like in the like the castle that these guys went to for their first adventure site, I rolled some cool stuff for the castle to give it some interesting character. But when I rolled the inhabitants, I rolled like it's uninhabited. I was like, perfect. That'll give this kind of feeling of ability to rediscover. Maybe somebody was here and all that stuff. And then I was like, okay. And it's like, is it really uninhabited? There was literally a table that said like, are you sure it's uninhabited? And then I had to roll again. And it was like, just kidding. There's a fucking giant in it. What? And don't get me wrong, like as a DM, you always have final say to how these things go. But we talked about random tables recently, and I thought it was fair to let the tables kind of decide these types of encounters. And I thought that was nice for me to then go, okay, well, I have to twist my understanding of what this encounter really could look like. So just put the dressing on. There's a giant here, give him some details. He considers himself the warden of the forest. He interacts with the Rush brothers. They pay him tribute to defend the lands, whatever. And, and I just made it very basic. And the fact that you guys didn't go into the keep, slightly. There was a piece of me that was like,
no. As a GM, I would have been disappointed too. But I, especially after the encounter with the bear, if anything would have gone sideways with the giant, we'd have just been dead.
Oh man, like 1,000%. I'd have been like, okay, well, the first thing you can do is flee, and I would recommend making those move rolls now because that thing, the giant has like a 24.
So we
strength.
pre-fleed.
Yeah, you pre-fleed before getting in.
We had the free preloaded. The flea preloaded. That is hard to say. And it's like, okay, danger. All right, let's go. There are other things to explore.
And and when you went to your next adventure site, it was a cave in the forest. It had orcs in it. Then you actually had an encounter. I rolled an encounter. You encountered somebody, and it was people. Like every time I was rolling,
and we kind of helped them, but I feel like they died somehow sooner than us.
Well, you gave them D6 resource die, which at least made them not hungry for hopefully a day or two, statistically. And it's just like you guys felt like you were doing it. And as you get to Weatherstone, spoilers, you have other. You're supposed to encounter this and that you're supposed to find out that there's potentially other adventurers that have already made it to this adventure site before you.
And that wouldn't have been that surprising.
No, but
we didn't even get there.
But what takes the punch out of it is the fact that you've encountered things everywhere you went. It's not been like, oh, I found some secret in the lands or something. It's been like, oh, I'm second to the party every time.
But that's any game that's going to have a lot of random encounters. You're going to have a lot of that where it feels, especially like if the GM gets hot dice, for whatever reason, or whoever's rolling for the random encounters. If you make the players do it, that always felt torturous to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the setting benefits. I personally think that maybe they went a little hard on the lore building for the basic books. I think they could have gone harder in like the Raven's Purge and their own adventure books to kind of flesh it out. But I think if they were leaving it up to the GMs, introducing those inconsistencies right out of the gate, like for what the game is supposed to be and all that stuff. Because and here's what's really crazy is the number of people that actually lived out there during the Blood Mist was a lot. It was like surprising.
Yeah, I kind of assumed it was no one, and then I quickly learned that it wasn't no one. Like they didn't just build the hollows the day after the mist was raised.
No, the hollows was there the entire time. You know what and what's crazy is that like without getting into too many details, it's like the Rush brothers traveled in the mist. So there were already people transversing there. So why couldn't they go to these adventure sites if they so chose? Well,
they could have.
They just
I don't know what they did, but they could have.
They just wandered around gathering tithes for people and not accumulating power for 300 years. They had 300 years to get a jump start on everybody. Like, what? Why?
I don't know. I there's a few quibbles with the lore, but for the most part, it's a nice setting.
Yeah.
And I thought the art in the book supported the setting. Like I like the art in the book. I like the cover of the book. I like,
Yeah, it was good.
Not that that's part of the lore, but it all blends for me because it helps me picture it.
Well, and there are definitely some kin specific flourishes that they added that I thought were really cool. Like there's some stuff about the elves that is really cool. There's some stuff about the wolfkin that are really cool. And there's some weird stuff about like the goblins and stuff, but well, I'm not going to get into spoilers. I'm just saying that they
Yeah,
added some interesting flourishes to the
they
kin
did.
that as a GM you have some good ideas to add to your game. And I like how those were definitely peppered throughout the setting because it wasn't for a lack of ideas. It was just the lethality of the system that really got us. And I think that's a good segue to get into the core mechanics because the, I it, I'm sure there's a way we could have survived our bear encounter, but let's talk about what the core dice mechanic is. So the so this is kind of just a, if you never heard of the Year Zero engine, know that it's a D6 game, and I think OSR games typically are D20. So I think this puts us in the new TSR realm because it's an OSR principled game, but it's got
The new
different,
OSR stuff.
yeah, it's got a different dice mechanic to it. So you know what, I'm not really an expert in that, and I kind of get confused every time I try to dive into it. So, but needless to say, the core loop of this is that there's D6s that you roll. You get an attribute dice, you get skill dice, and you get gear dice. And your goal is to build as big a pool as you can, because
Mhm.
each six is considered a success. Multiple sixes can have additional effects depending on what you're doing. But at least one success means that you typically did the thing that you set out to do. Whereas the other stuff improve how well you did it, or maybe increase your
Right.
damage or something like that. Your base dice and I think your gear dice. All of a sudden, I forgot. Your skill dice cannot produce banes, but banes are basically when you roll ones, and when you use the push mechanic, meaning that you choose to re-roll, anything that rolls a bane, a one, causes damage to you, which can mean that if you get these banes, they can stack up fairly
Oh,
quickly.
at level 1, it weakens you significantly if
And
really you get any more than a couple of banes.
well, and it's like it goes to you pretty quick. I mean,
It does.
you don't have a lot of damage that you can soak in your attributes in the
No.
beginning, and this game does suffer from that process because you build your dice pool from a dwindling attribute. There is I mean, people have heard about the death spiral in dice. You could find that to be a concern that you have,
No,
is that
if you get into a
once you get
place where you
swing.
can't flee, you're pretty screwed if the one
Mhm.
stat that you're using keeps getting smaller by 1 or 2 every time the opponent attacks you.
Yep.
Because the most you can start off with is 5 in an attribute, or is
Hmm.
it 4?
I think it was five. It was your primary attribute
Yeah,
can have
I
five.
didn't have I didn't build up to a 5. I was a little more well-rounded than that, but I had a 4. But yeah, I had other stats that were 2s.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, any dice helps, I guess, but um, every dice helps, but not every dice gets you to where you need to be. Um, oh, I just looked at Grum's, and he doesn't have any attributes. That's funny. I must have gotten a different version of his sheet than he expected. Cool. Um, oh gosh, that's funny. I didn't even notice. So so basically the question then becomes is how did it actually feel in play? Did it feel like it was creating tension? Did it feel like it was creating drama? I mean, I think at the
I
most you rolled like
When stuff
14 dice.
happened, yes. Sorry, I
Hmm.
talked over you. I
No, no, go ahead.
apologize. Um, no, when stuff happened, yes, I felt drama and tension. When stuff didn't happen, I felt boredom, and internally I was going, "Why am I playing this game?" Like,
Ooh.
no, it took honestly, it took most of 2 sessions for me to find at least some level of peace
Hmm.
with the way time is construed during the day.
Hmm.
I just had a real problem with it. It's me. It's not the game because the game is well received and a lot of people love playing it.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I would ever play the game with a party of 2 again, although I know some people have had really long campaigns like with 2 people, but I
Hmm.
don't know how you ever level up if all you do is run away from stuff. Or
Well,
you find the cave with the tiny rats and the chipmunks and you just farm it for 3 straight years every day.
Yeah. Well, but to be fair, when you develop your character, and this is just one of those things where I can at least speak to this, is that you, as you advance, you basically get at least get a minimum amount of experience each session that you play.
Sure.
Right. So there is definitely a there is definitely a way for that to, you advance your characters fairly quickly depending on how you play. And much like other Year Zero engine games, one of the games is like, did you show up for the session, if my memory serves?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so like, so you if you play 2 hour sessions like we do, there's a chance that you could actually go like hyper speed on the leveling, if you weren't careful in balancing that out.
Yeah. No, when you
I,
play short sessions, you can't, if it's per session stuff, you can't award everything unless everything was being handled really efficiently.
the one thing I did notice though is that I feel like the game, like the drama in the game, felt punishing in the weirdest spots. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, so for example, when you guys were doing like your make camp right before resting and stuff like that, the way I read the rules is that when you were doing your healing, you basically healed when you rested, right? So it didn't matter if you pushed your die roll right before resting, unless you got ambushed, like you got an encounter when you were resting, right? Like the only time that intersection was a bad thing for you to push the die roll is if you literally had an encounter
Sure.
that that is there. And I mean, as long as you guys aren't broken, I mean, I should say that being broken is a
Well,
kind of a
up
little
until
bit
the
of a
last encounter, we weren't broken. Then we
yeah.
broke, and then we
Mhm.
died.
Yeah, because you mean you literally went if you're back on your feet, you recover all your remaining lost attribute points by resting or sleeping for a quarter day. And so you literally just energize your bunny, like spring back to life, full of vim and vinegar, and everything is ready to go. And that I think was made some of those rolls less tense. Like you guys pushing a forage roll right before, or like a make camp roll. I mean, oh, I got 2 attribute damage, but since that, I mean, I
No,
guess you
there were
could.
definitely times where there wasn't a lot. It didn't seem like there was a lot of negative consequence to push. Like
Mhm.
I've played other games with push mechanics where it was like every time I went, but my knee jerk reaction was like, I'm going to push. Wait a second, hang on. Okay, not the moment. Not going to do it.
Well,
What? I'm sorry. What's the horrible saying? The juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
mhm.
You
Yeah,
know, but
and
in this game, a lot of the time it was like, well, I needed to do something and I didn't do it. And if I don't do it, bad stuff happens. So I'm going to push because either way, bad stuff happens.
and the other thing that was kind of interesting about it is that it felt like you were able to farm willpower points out of the deal, right? Like you were like,
Well,
as
Brent
long
rolled
as
a lot of Banes when he pushed. I didn't get as many.
well,
Um,
but if it doesn't kill you and then you sleep and I don't roll an encounter, like it's literally like free willpower points up to 10. And I mean, willpower is good. Like I didn't want it to be where you guys didn't have any willpower, because that's I guess, there's a lot of people that
no,
don't want you to roll a lot in the game, but willpower is like how you be cool in your class. Like kind of need
no, yeah,
willpower
no. I
to
let
do that.
Brent kept using his class feature to keep us safe during travel.
Hmm.
Right? I
Hmm.
forget exactly what it was. But I thought that was kind of cool. So we didn't have a lot of encounters that way. Um,
Hmm.
which was fine. Like I don't mind playing in lethal systems. I really don't. I don't even mind that we died in the third session,
Hmm.
third session. Um Sometimes that happens, especially when you have an undersized party,
Yeah.
Like that doesn't color my judgment of the game. Things happen. I think we made a poor when we saw bear, we should have dropped everything, forgot we owned it, and you know, ran.
And you could have, like, I mean, that's
We
and
could
that's
have.
fine. I think that what's interesting about it for me is that, so like what's fascinating to me about this entire thing is that, like, I made the bear kind of charge you, and I gave you kind of like an ooh scary moment, and like literally the bear charged up, you hit it with an arrow, it had a lesser chance to do any damage to you. But when it was in your threatening range and you guys tried to move out of it, it literally just wiped you both out.
No,
Like it,
yeah.
it was it was such a like it was so surprising that I rolled so well doing that I was like, oh, how
Well,
many hit points do you have? Like, oh, three,
you
and I just
rolled
did three.
well. Like Brent had 9 dice in his pool
Mm-hmm.
and hit it once. I had 7 in mine and didn't hit it, and I pushed, and that when I threw it, had thrown 14 dice at it and didn't hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said on the episode, that's statistically improbable. It does happen, and it does create some interesting moments. And I got my arm
True.
chopped off the next turn. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It just ripped off your arm. You're playing with like a Wookiee basically, and
yeah, no,
so
I should have let the Wookiee win.
well, I think you did let the
My
Wookiee win
bad.
on accident.
Yeah,
So I mean and the interesting part is did you ever feel like you pushed a roll and regretted it though? Like, I mean, was there like a, oh, I didn't moment? I shouldn't have done that
no,
moment?
I
Like,
needed to hit that bear with an arrow. And
yeah.
I didn't, even after pushing. And whatever, I do think I rolled 2 Banes the first time. So I do think I got 2 willpower that was very short lived that I couldn't
Yeah.
use because my class feature was definitely uninteresting. I will say this: as a low level
Mhm.
magic user in this game, you need offensive spells. You do not need wayfinding spells. You do not need informational spells. You need offensive or defensive spells.
Mhm. Yeah, and I and I think that that's one of the things that was a little bit it kind of leans into the fact that if you're playing an OSR game, you almost have to bake some of this like class balance into your party, especially as a two-person party. And what I felt was interesting was that a hunter and a druid are a good party. And I wasn't going to tell you how to like make your
Uh,
thing, but the way of the druid that's
We
a
thought there were
healer.
synergies there that wound up not benefiting us.
Well, and I think what ended up happening is you guys actually kind of overlapped maybe more than you intended to,
Probably.
because the path that you took was very very much an information path. Like, how do I
Yes.
learn about things? And Brent was
That was
also an
very much the
information
character I built.
was also an information person. So you kind of had two information people. And I think when I was
My
reading
character was
online,
so worthless in this setting that it's not even funny. And I designed it. So what does that say
yeah.
about me as a player? And
Well,
like the
but
bear, like I had to try to step away from the bear because my melee weapon was a dagger. I was not attacking the bear with a dagger. I just wasn't. I figured it was safer to try to step away, and then he got a attack. Okay, I guess attack of opportunity is another system's way of terminating it, but I was trying to step away and didn't do
mhm.
so swiftly enough, and the bear got to swing at me and took off my arm.
It was a good swing.
It was a lethal wound.
Was.
I was broken.
And the hardest part about that entire thing is I think I'm still like learning the rules, but the system is so unforgiving that was 3 dice rolls and the party was down. Like, that's really,
Yeah,
well, no,
Brent
it
could have
was 4
recovered
dice
if I could
rolls.
have done something heroic, but of
Mhm.
course, part of my character's thing was like I owe Brent my life, and I can't leave a friend alone. Like, never
Yeah.
let your friends down.
I I think so. I think in the game, since it's a game that really emphasizes the players taking risks, but taking controlled risks through things like pushing and stuff like that.
Controlled
I
is a
really
good term.
I think that the idea is that it's really beneficial if you can put your pride on the line as well. Because one thing
Okay,
that I think
interesting.
is that a really, and I wonder if, like, I think I may have just been so surprised I didn't even think about it, but there are opportunities where if your pride comes into play, you get something called an artifact dice. And I think this artifact dice is very powerful because the artifact dice, depending on which step of artifact dice it is, it goes all the way up to, I want to say, I all of a sudden forgot, but I thought it was like a D12 or something like that. But
Honestly, it
basically,
never came up, so I
well, and
remember
it's
seeing it in the rule book, but I did not look at it too closely because I was like,
so the
if it comes up, then we'll deal with it.
so D12 is the highest level of artifact dice, and that's the truth here. And what's interesting about it is that the D12, it converts into multiple successes. So what's really neat is that since you are putting your pride into this thing, it gives you this legendary push through whatever it is. And I think that's the part of the risk that's really good to capitalize on.
Okay,
So like for you, and what if you roll the D12 and you get at this because it's a once per game session kind of ability. It's like a, it's like a luck. Like I've managed the synergy because the intersection of what's happening intersects with my pride, and I'm good at the things that I have with my pride. If you roll that D12 and you get a 12, you get 4 successes towards whatever you're doing.
Wow.
So there is it's tiered. So a 6 or 7 gives you 1 success, 8 or 9 gives you 2, a 10 or 11 gives you 3, and a 12 gives you a whopping 4 successes towards what you're doing. And as we described, successes enhance whatever it is. So if
They
like you
help
would
a
have,
lot.
so if you, and since it's a skill roll, if you use that pride into it, like I'm thinking that the way that we could have probably done that maybe included your pride is that if you wanted to attack that bear with your knife and you use that as kind of like your Superman moment to just like get off my friend, and you like charge the bear with your knife like all crazy because you're never going to leave your friend behind, right? You
Mhm.
might have rolled that D12 and that could have been a game changing moment there. You know what I'm saying? Like
Possibly.
a very
No,
heroic moment.
possibly.
And I think story wise, that could have been a very cool thing too, right? If that would have played out like that. So getting 4 successes on that. I'm hypothetical. I mean, obviously it's a D12, so it's like knowing our
So
luck,
1
you would
in
have rolled.
12 shot. I was already on a cold streak.
You would have rolled your melee dice, and you literally would have rolled 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. Like
No, yeah,
that.
no, I'd already thrown 14 dice at a bow shot and gotten no successes.
Yeah. So I'm just letting you know that pride I think is an interesting part of that as well, as
Sure.
where you can leverage that per game to kind of like give you that extra boost. And I think that's something we underutilized in our short amount of play that I think
No,
if you more capitalized on it.
yeah, now that you explain it better, it's probably something I should have, and that's on me. Again, that's on me as a player.
Yeah.
It isn't that there weren't things that I didn't like about the system. I'm
Mhm.
debating how much I actually like hex crawls at this point.
Mhm.
But again, that's a personal thing, right? That's a
Yep.
style of game that I don't know. There were things I enjoyed and things that I didn't, and
Yeah.
I still have some objections to the time abstraction, but there are definitely things there that I can see why people would like it.
Yeah. Well, so
The
let's
2 people party just wasn't.
it's a hard party. You either need to have you guys either need to bring hirelings, you need to play 4 characters, or I needed to give you some extra bonuses like a solo, like they recommended for solo players. I think if you'd have had the extra skills and the extra talents, I think and maybe armor or whatever it's recommended that you do, you might
I
have
had
had
leather armor. It just didn't help when the bear swam.
I've said
You ripped through it.
might have adjusted the outcome.
Might have.
Um,
Sure.
but the hex scroll part of it, like just so people understand kind of more definitively what we're talking about is that, I mean, the game operates in hex. It's not new. I mean, there's obviously been hex crawls
Mm-mm.
before. The quarter day system that Jeff is talking about is that it's basically broken up into 4 days. I mean, for the most part, that's how you play the game is you have these quarter day things. And when you have 2 people, it can be hard to do do, do what you need to because things like keeping watch and preventing yourself from dying are actual tasks in of themselves. So a 2-person party can either set up camp and keep watch or sleep and keep watch. And you kind of get into that weird, like you lose a quarter day because one of you is
Right.
watching while the other one's
And then
sleeping.
if you don't sleep, you're tired.
Mm-hmm.
And then from being tired, you get negatives. There's drawbacks to everything. There's drawbacks
Yeah.
to everything. It's you gotta
And
learn how to play, and I don't know that in 3 sessions we
yeah,
know how to play. I think if we played again, I would have a better idea. If I was going to play again, I would want maybe a party of 4 or 5.
I think that would have helped. And I think that's true for a lot of OSR style games just because it kind of spreads the lethality out a little bit. And I would say
Well,
though
I
that
think you get more balance. You can handle more different types of threats.
yeah, without just exploding immediately. but the 4-part day, I think it's simple. It's nice in that regard that it makes it a very macro easy thing to do. And it kind of leads me to the comments about the resource system. And the resource dies, there were 4 things that you had resource die for. And I think this is where people are going to really either like the game or hate the game, is that things like food, water, arrow, and torches, you just have a die that you use. So it's not a 100% like just hand waving. It still kind of exists at the back of your mind. but you can have a D6 to a D12 for each of these resource dice. And each time you use the resource, aka you eat, you fire a bow, you roll your resource die, and if it rolls a 1 or a 2, then it steps down. And then, of course, if you roll a 1 or 2 on a D6, you're actually out of whatever said resource is. And me personally, as a person who doesn't like to know because when we played Dolmenwood, you had to know how many rations
Right.
you had to know like a very minute amount of things. And there are games that very simulationists are like, okay, well, how many torches do we have? How many gallons of water do we have? How many arrows? Get our quartermaster involved. Has he made sure that we're properly stocked up? And I like this level of abstraction because it still adds a mechanical component to the game that forces you to pay attention to it, but not always scribbling and adding check spot, if that makes sense.
No, but it's weird because you'd have if you got something up to a D12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's only 2 out of 12 rolls that make you have to step down to a D10. And so you kind of are like, oh yeah, no, everything's fine. We still have water, or we still have food, or I still have torches or arrows. But when you get down to a D6 and it's a 1 in 3 chance that suddenly, guess what? You don't have any food, or you don't have any water, or you don't have any arrows in the middle of combat. Then it gets your attention.
It does. And one thing I found kind of strange about it is that it's a strange abstraction, because if the more of whatever you have, the less likely you're to step down. So like if you have a D12 in a thing, you only have a 1 in 6 chance of stepping down. Whereas if you have a D10, you have a 1 in 5, 1 in 4,
then a 1 in 4, and then a 1 in 3. Yeah.
and you're kind of like, huh. So the more you have of something, the easier it is to keep it.
No, but it still happens. Like it feels like it's never going to happen, but it still happens, right? Like it still varies, and then you can go out and forage and get food and water. If you forage specifically for water, you can get water, I guess. The arrows, you'd have to go to a town or steal them from somebody, I guess. Find them on a corpse,
something like that. But
I didn't mind it. I don't know that I loved it, but I didn't mind it.
Yeah. And to revisit a point you said earlier, the most pedantic thing that we had to deal with was what's the difference between food versus meat versus vegetable versus.
That was that took a second for us to wrap our head around, because there were some very specific things that you could search for, and there was no chance of finding anything. If you were looking for X, you couldn't find A, B, or C, even though A, B, or C could exist in the area where you're looking, because you're so focused on X. For 6 hours.
It's less like a scavenging roll and more like I'm sitting in a blind looking for some game to pass by me.
For hunting, yes, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But it's like, because there's that show Alone we watch all the time. Very rarely did people just sit in like one spot waiting for game to come by. They usually were traveling around, picking berries, finding things. You know what I'm saying? They were maximizing their time, and then to suddenly be restricted so much to that. And then
it does feel, that's a good point, Mike, because it feels as a player like you aren't really maximizing your time. Like the travel part, I get walking 6 hours, perfect to get to another hex. That's fine. Finding water in a forest for 6 hours. I live in an area that's wooded. I have spent 6 hours in the woods, and I usually find multiple sources of water.
I mean,
and I understand real life and game life are different things, but it hurts my head. It breaks my suspension of disbelief.
It's true. And I think that that made it kind of interesting to me to like try to mechanically play that through, because it felt like sometimes the common sense got in the way of the game sense, because Brent was very charged on the idea that he shot some game, but then that game just burst into bot flies or something, and
the idea
hours.
That a hunter wouldn't have any idea how to preserve meat that he'd hunted seems semi-ridiculous.
Well, and then the worst part is,
even if you'd have said that you can do it, but you got to camp for an extra day so that it smokes properly, that would have been fine.
Well, exactly. Like,
but he couldn't do it without the chef thing, and then with the chef thing, miraculously, it's just a die roll, and it's like, I quick preserved it. I can't tell you how. because
I
I'm
just
magic.
I just slathered it in salt and got that's how you got salted beef. This is how. This is how. Um
Salted beef out
and
of squirrel. That's the real magic of the whole thing.
did you guys I guess to get back to the hex crawl part of it and
Sure.
everything like that, did you like this is a game that provides a ton of player agency. And I like the idea of a hex crawl because I think as a GM that means that I kind of throw away my plot points and I say, you help me create your adventure. But did you like having a map that you were discovering? Like, does that change or, like get you a more
There were parts
enthusiastic?
of that I liked. I liked knowing that we had been. I know I joked about good old square J21 or whatever it was. Like I know
Mhm.
I joked about that. But it was nice at the end of the session to be able to see which hexes we had actually been to,
I,
so that we
I,
weren't like I understand in a narrative game you can just sort of hand wave like, oh yeah, we
mhm,
continue to head in a generally northeast direction. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Discovering new lands all the time.
Yeah.
But at least with the map, we had an idea of when we'd hit water or we would hit a site, and we could try to angle directly for that. And it did give you some goals to go for.
Well,
So
and
from that standpoint, I didn't mind, rather than just mindlessly wandering an outward spiral, just so we don't miss any hexes, because that's where the one we skipped is the one that had the good stuff, Mike.
well, it's true. Well, and I like how the adventure sites present themselves on the thing. Like, and at least the image gives you an idea that like you're running into a cave, at least, or a whatever, or
Sure.
you know what I'm saying, a dungeon or a keep or whatever it may be. And I think that giving you guys the ability to say, oh, well, I think we should check out what this is. But the other cool part about it is I think that because we made our decisions, that you could go back to that square later and be like, hey, orcs,
You could.
we have stuff to
Sure.
trade with you. Do you have either information or other things that you can trade with, and they could, you could have your own like things as you do. And I
No,
thought,
we certainly could have, had we.
and and my goal was if the game session went, if my goal would be is if the game session went longer, then it provides these weird nodes where you are part of this forest, right? Like you don't have to go back to the hollows to have a good night's rest because you can go to the orc cave or you meet other people or
Sure.
allies or enemies. Your allies and enemies are built kind of as you adventure a little bit
That
more
makes
organically.
sense. I like that.
Yeah.
No,
And I
like I said, there are things in the game
aspirationally,
that I really liked. I
so
think that's what made me the maddest. Is because this
yeah.
wasn't a game where I was like, because like we have all we play a lot of games on this channel, a lot of games,
Hmm.
and so we're learning new rules constantly. And there are times where it's like, I'm not fully bought into this. But
Well, so
I liked the idea. I really did.
mm. So here's a question for you though. So
Sure.
if I wouldn't have introduced the adventure site of Weatherstone, like if I had just had let that legend off the table, would would you feel like the hex crawl was purposeful, or do you feel like it might have been a little aimless? Because
I felt it would have been a little aimless,
Mhm.
unless I was finding new and exciting herbs and plant species and tree saplings and whatever else druids collect in the middle of the forest, moss
I didn't have enough
samples.
rules to support that.
They didn't. No, and that's the funny thing. Yeah, I was like, God, this for an OSR game, this just isn't ruly enough for me.
Yeah.
Damn it, I
So
need a specific hunt moss skill.
yeah, and I feel like it would have been nice to have those types of like because of all the things that it could have gone into greater details on, it left those out of it. And so the key defining areas of the character that you thought you were building were stuff that rules didn't really support. So it's like, well, it kind of did when you used the Book of Beasts.
When you
You could
use the
like
Book of
add
Beast, yeah,
to.
no, so it came up, so I wasn't the only one.
Okay, so I mean, really, the game, it has good things that it does, and it has areas that I feel like it's not as strong. And as we played a lot of games on the channel, I don't feel like every game is going to be fucking perfect. Everything's going to have its warts,
No,
and I mean, the question is that I think the question you have to ask yourself if you really want to dive into this game is that do you want to play a hex crawl?
that's
So
the big one.
from a GM perspective, I mean, I found that the encouragement for them to like say, hey, don't prepare a lot each session. Let the game kind of unfold naturally. We have some tables and all that stuff. I felt that was nice, and I feel like if you want to get together with your friends and just play a game as the GM, you're not like over plotting, for hours and hours and hours each week. You're just basically reminding yourself who your players are, what they've done, where they've been, what's nearby for them to explore, and maybe having a few tables that you've pre-generated for dungeons and keeps that they could possibly get to. I mean, the prep for this could take you as little as 15 to 30 minutes, per session. And as a GM, that's a lot less than, say, the Coriolis game that I'm trying to figure out the woven tapestry that they've got for that first book. Whew. And so, but as from a player's perspective, I mean,
You have to be in the mood for a dungeon crawl, a hex crawl.
Yeah.
No, they're similar but different, right? You have to be in the mood for a hex crawl or really enjoy them, where you really don't know what's around the corner, because literally you move into the next hex and something may happen, right? Good, bad, or indifferent, something may happen. Like I said, I see the appeal of the game. I don't know if this is the particular game for me, as a lifestyle kind of game. But if we got a sufficiently big party, I would try it again. But as a player, the big thing is you've got to play a hex crawl, and when you build your character, you got to build wannabe Conan the Barbarian, who is prepared for anything. You have to build wannabe Batman.
Well, and I think you just have to recognize that you have to understand that the game is lethal enough that
it is.
It really only takes one bad thing at the beginning, and it's lethal enough in the beginning. But I'm sure, as all games, as you get more power, abilities, items, and stuff, there's a little bit of tempering of that as you go.
Probably,
but at least in the very beginning, your characters are basically made out of paper mache.
You're one piss poor decision away from death. I know because I did it.
One good roll by the GM ends the character very quickly, or at least breaks the character very quickly. I mean, and then possibly ends up with a critical strike. But the idea is that, I mean, it's, you have to be looking at this from it's a lethal game. The adventure comes from hex crawling. You don't think that you can skip on the hex crawl and have as good of a game of this, because here's something interesting.
You have to commit to the exploration.
You do, and it's done in a way that I think
not going to hit you in the face like a runaway train.
Well, it isn't, because there's no meta plot really until you do you could do the campaigns, but in the exploration part, it doesn't say like, oh, you should drop meta plot point A here. It's just like you run into bees that are demon bees. What do you do? I fucking get out of there. But the idea is that, setting wise, there's enough richness to the setting that you could actually weave a lot of that in. I feel like, if you understand the setting better than I did going into it, and you didn't fall for the pitch, you could actually create some really cool stuff with this that I think you could do either with the system, or if you wanted to just explore the story of the Ravenlands, or the Forbidden Lands, whatever you want to call them. If you wanted to explore those, I think you could have some really cool adventures just in the story. But I think you miss out on like what the game is trying to do if you just ignore the scrolling part, because they really want you to kind of get into the muck of the, like, how do you survive? Like, what are you doing? How do you earn it? And I think that might be the OSR thing, is like, what did you do to earn your stripes? Like that.
That's fair.
I survived 13 days in the wilderness. I had to forage for my food. We barely made it out alive. You know what I'm saying? Like, it leaves those kind of campfire stories that are a little bit more mundane than I ran into the Lich Dragon, negotiated it with a persuasion check. It's just a different type of game. So final thoughts. Would I play this game again? Yeah, hell yeah, I'd play this game again. I think I would, as Jeff said, play it with more players. And I think, knowing what I know now, I would probably be better equipped to explain how the Forbidden Lands feels, so that, instead of making it seem like it's just kind of like this this place that's like 100% available for them to rediscover, kind of more established that it's like an arms race. If you don't get there quick, other people are going to get there faster than you. So if you want to be part of this, like, treasure hunting, stronghold building group, you gotta you got to get the hustle on, because anything you can see, they can see too.
No, that's true. No, that's true, and that would put a boot up your ass,
Mhm.
apply a little urgency. Um, I would play again in a bigger party, but I would probably suggest another. I'd probably, we could play that, but what about this game? Like, I for whatever reason I bounced off of this a little bit. Um, I've enjoyed talking about it because I feel better about it now than I did at the beginning of the episode.
Mhm.
As I've been able to get some of my thoughts and actually understand some of the reasons behind some of the stuff, like
Yeah.
a little bit of misunderstanding about the setting, a little bit of poor character design, like
Mhm.
the roles happen, right? Especially in a game that's got some lethality. If you have bad rolls at the wrong time and they have good rolls, really bad things can happen, and that's okay. Like I
Mhm.
I am not crying because I died. I I just I The
But
hex crawling
but the
thing is okay if everybody buys into it, I guess.
Well, but the game isn't sold as a game that's you're just playing to see how your character dies. Like a Call of Cthulhu game is billed as how do you play
Mm,
your character to find out how he went insane or died. Inevitable was
sure.
how does your character run up against that wall of fate, which is greater than anybody can climb. Like there are games that are designed around the idea of you're basically playing their final chapter, and this is not billed at that game, but it's so lethal and so that it could be surprising that you didn't realize you were in your
That's true.
final chapter. And I feel like that could be a little unsatisfying for people to have that lack of thing, because I think that that's more of just an OSR thing where characters are just
Okay.
so throwaway, and we've taled about that before. Like,
No,
you make
there
you
are
make
some
characters
games where it
quick.
feels like all of your characters are disposable, and the henchman that you hired in town is going to be your second player character.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm still not as big of a fan of those types of games where, you invest this time into the character only to have them die at the first mishap. Oh, you stumbled on a tree root and I rolled. Oh, there was actually a pit trap there.
I am
Oh, you
Fighter
take
Bob the 527th.
yeah.
We are in the
I'm
sixth week of this campaign.
I'm Bob. I'm Bobbed. you
Yeah.
know, whatever.
No, I would say to other people though, if any of what we've talked about
Hmm.
like sounds interesting and you get a chance to try this game, I think you should try it. Like
Yeah.
I this isn't like a ringing endorsement. I get that, but for me, it's a try it kind of thing,
Yeah.
because you may like it. It,
Well, and honestly, like I said, this game's been out for a while. It has a very
it
strong
has,
community, and there are people
and the
that
community's
found a
fun.
lot.
I did jump into some of the, I didn't participate, but I
Read
God forbid
along.
you actually participate in the group.
Hey, man, going on social media and typing stuff is hard. That's why Brent does it, and we'll we'll get into
Yes,
that. Well, he'll help. He'll contact you if you want to talk with somebody online and you want to talk to Brent. He's more than happy to jump in and chat with you on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Blue
Is that
Sky,
all we're on? Threads? Are we on
Threads,
Threads?
supposedly.
That's a lot.
I'm not on Threads, so I
That's a
can't
lot.
check.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not as good at social media as
We
Brent
are
is.
on most of the larger social media platforms, and we are at Rollwise on all of those platforms.
It's true. So if you're running a hex squall, remember to read the survival rules first. But I think that's going to call. I think that's going to be it for this episode. We really appreciate it if you made it this far. We're actually going to be jumping into another OSR game because we just like punishing ourselves. We're going to be doing a little bit of Death in Space.
I really
Uh,
like that cover. Sorry, I just really like
oh,
that
it's
cover.
it's good. Death in Space. I like the idea of it. I think it's definitely a little bit simpler in ways than Forbidden Lands is. I mean, obviously
Okay,
it's a 150-page book versus a the 400 pages between the player's handbook and the GM's guide or whatever the
sure.
Forbidden Lands is. But it's been an easy read stylistically. I think I have to double check this, but I think somewhere there's a connection to Morkborg or something like that. I think one of the creators is
Oh
in
wow.
on that game. So don't quote me on that yet. I will have my research done for when we actually play the game, and 5 days. Um,
Mike's random
so
hot take. Correct or incorrect? We don't know yet. We'll have to fact
yeah,
check
well,
that.
I mean, my brain, I think my brain made that connection, but I could be also wrong because I'm still reading the inside of the book and I'm bad with names. I hate to say it. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, you can catch us on social media. You can email us at rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
Hmm.
Obviously, we love talking with you. So hit the comments, like, subscribe, use the notification bell if you want to know whenever we post videos. So hang out with us. But that's it. You want to hit Brent's line since he's not here?
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Roll well, roll wise, be safe out there. Thanks,
See
everyone.
you, everyone.